Everybody taking the time out. We know how busy it is in RTO land, and to take some time out to discuss some of the quals reform work that's going on, and particularly in the automotive space today. We really appreciate you giving us your time and your feedback and questions as we go through the session today and afterwards. Perhaps we just have our next slide, please, Andreas. So Leanne and I are coming to you today from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples, and we'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of these lands and the many lands that all of you today are living and working on. And we pay our respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that have joined us today, and we look forward to having your comments and input into our discussions over the next hour or so. Our next slide just shows the agenda and the process we'll run through today. We'll begin just with a bit of an overview of the background behind the quals reform projects, just so that you have a little bit of context for why we're asking the questions that we ask and why we're doing the work that we've done. That'll lead into some specifics around the categorisation of the qualifications themselves. We'll have an opportunity there for some question and answer, and then we'll have a look at the aspect of the project that involves the low and no enrolment qualifications, and a further opportunity for some questions. You will notice just a bit of housekeeping here at the top of your screen. There's an option for a chat and a Q&A. The chat won't be active, but we do very much encourage you to put your questions into the Q&A. And that's being ably managed by some of our team here, and they'll call out your questions as we go along, either at the question and answer opportunities or at other relevant points along the way. So please do feel free to put any of your comments and thoughts in there that we can address as we go through our session. So our next slide just introduces us to a little bit of the background of the quals reform work. Maybe just because we've had a few latecomers come in, we'll just point you in the direction of the Q&A there. There's some comments there about the fact that we're recording today for those that have just come in a little bit late. Thanks for coming along. So the background is that in 2023, Australia's skills ministers identified the need and opportunity to improve some aspects of our qualification system. And to that end, they established the Qualification Reform Design Group. And you might hear us talk about the QRDG. That's what we're referring to there. And this group has been charged with investigating the development of a program of qualification reform. And they've actually involved the Jobs and Skills Councils in testing the work that they've proposed. And that took place since March 2024 this year, when they provided a report to the skills ministers called Unlocking the Potential of VET. And that's available for public reference. It's on the Department of Employment Workplace Relations website. And I think we actually included a link to it as well in the pre-reading that we sent out to you. So we encourage you to have a look at that at your leisure. And you'll note in that report that there were some recommendations around a proposed purpose-driven and principles-based qualification system. And it's really designed to better support the diverse users of the VET system. That's the intent that they're aiming for. When this came out in March, the Jobs and Skills Councils were commissioned to do some work that followed in around about April, May. And we had quite tight timelines with a preliminary report due in June, which we submitted back on the 12th of June, along with the other Jobs and Skills Councils. But now we've got that opportunity as we head into September, when our final report's due, to actually test some of the desktop analysis that we did, some of the thinking that we've come up with along the way, with all of you as key stakeholders and experts in the field. You're on the front lines actually working with these qualifications. So we want to test the thinking that's gone into the work so far. We move on to our next slide, please, Andreas. As was mentioned, it's a purpose-driven approach that the QRDG have come up with that allows for retaining some of the aspects of the system that work really well. Some of our qualifications, you can probably think of some that your RTO delivers that really hit the target. They deliver for the student and for industry, giving them the skills and qualifications that they need. Whereas other qualifications don't work so well. Perhaps they did when they were implemented over the last 20 or 30 years, but now there's perhaps some new ways that we need to think about addressing the needs of employers and also the learners. And so that's what's led to the proposal that the QRDG has come up with. And we will just note again that you'll hear us probably say this a few times throughout today, just to put everyone's minds at ease, that the outcomes of the work that we're discussing today, and even some of the findings that we've come to date, are really just to test the proposal. There's not any outcome for this work in September that's due in September beyond the fact that we report on our findings as to whether the proposed model works and perhaps any adjustments or tweaks that might need to be made to that proposal based on and including your feedback that we've received today and in the coming days. So if we move on to our next slide, we can actually see the three, we mentioned there's a purpose-driven model. The three purposes that the Quals Reform Design Group have identified are outlined there on the screen for you. Purpose one is one noted, a very familiar one to all of us. That talks about a qualification that leads to a specific occupation. A good example is really any of the trade qualifications, particularly the licensed ones, but really any of the traditional trade qualification that we'd be familiar with. And those qualifications necessarily include a high level of prescription because of the safety and the technical requirements of those qualifications and the adjoining occupations. The purpose two is a little broader. That's talking about qualifications that prepare a learner to enter a particular industry. In our case, we're looking at the automotive industry. So that would include some common core skills and knowledge that a learner would need as a new entrant to that sector. We've used the example there of a Cert 2 in construction pathways because that one well demonstrates the intent of a Purpose 2 qualification, where you have some core skills that are relevant across all construction trades, and then you do a little bit of a taster of each of the trades that exist. Might be a little bit of bricklaying and painting and carpentry. So a person comes out of that certificate too with a good general base knowledge to enter that industry and choose a specialisation as they enter their apprenticeship or trade qualification. Purpose three is more general again, something that is designed to prepare somebody for work across a range of industries. So the example given there is a diploma of leadership and management, which could be equally applied in the automotive industry, in the construction industry, in the finance sector, or even in something like health. So much more cross-sectoral in its application and very broad. And these purposes, just keep in mind, are not at all necessarily hierarchical. They're just identifying that qualifications can play a different role in the system. And we'll talk about how we've applied those to our two training packages, AUM and AUR, a little bit later. Thanks, Andres. The other aspect of the proposed model is the principles-based model, and you can see the 6 principles that are outlined on the screen there. I won't read them all out to you. Admittedly, this part of the proposal hasn't been tested too much in the work that we've done to date, because as we'll talk about the scope of the work in a few moments, these really sort of underpin perhaps the design of new qualifications, or as we go into amending qualifications, we can consider these principles and whether their relevance and make application of them in that design phase. But we're not really looking at these in great depth at this point with the work that we've done to date in the categorisation project. Thanks, Andreas. So the actual work that we're talking about today, the scope of the project, this work is known as the Categorisation Project. All 10 jobs and skills councils were given this work to do, and we're asked to select approximately 40 qualifications that represented a range of levels. It could be from Certificate 1 through to diploma level. Might have considered different aspects of various industries. In our case, we're able to choose the 2 of our 3 training packages that makes up the entirety of the automotive industry. So that was quite handy for us. It was mentioned on a previous slide, and again at the bottom of this one, we do have another project running as part of Quals Reform, which is the demonstration project. That's outside of the scope of the discussion today, but we mention it because that project picked up the 15 Certificate 2 qualifications in the AUR training package with the intent of testing them against Purpose 2. As that work's been progressing, it's been determined that 3 of those qualifications, the Cert 2s, aren't Purpose 2, and so they've now dropped into this work here. And that's happened since our initial preliminary report was submitted. So we've picked those up, and you'll see them mentioned throughout some of the later tables. But it's also why you won't see mention of the other 12 Certificate 2 qualifications. So don't be worried about that if you notice that. So the key aspects of this project were those 3 dot points there, that were to apply the purpose-led model to each qualification in the scope of our works, and test them against the purpose and see is this qualification a purpose 1, 2 or 3, and to provide a rationale for that. The next part there was to identify components or training products within our 2 packages with low or no enrolments and identify opportunities for reform there. And we will call out here as well, don't panic if you see a qualification that's of value to you listed as having low or no enrolments. It's just for the purpose of investigation. It might be that we need to provide some supports for them or other things, and we can discuss that a little bit later on. But it's really just calling them out, and so we know which qualifications to look at and target. And the third point there was an opportunity to assess and provide feedback on the proposed model. And perhaps it needs some tweaks, and that part of the feedback that we received from you all today and in the following survey is an opportunity for us to inform that process. Don, I notice you're off screen there, but would someone just want to point out if there's any questions that we need to pick up at this point in time? Otherwise, no? Okay, we can...
Just a request for the slides afterwards.
Yeah, certainly. They will be provided in a follow-up email. Thank you, Donna. So at this point, we'll hand over to Leanne, who's going to just walk us through the initial categorisation work that's been undertaken.
Thank you, Simon. Look, to support the initial categorisation, we developed a decision-making framework where we turned the purposes into questions, and then we use these as the basis to categorise each qualification. So to answer the questions, we collected several data sets listed in the slide and used the data to determine the initial purpose and a rationalisation for each qualification. So, for example, if a qualification is linked to a licence and is an apprenticeship, it was categorised as Purpose 1. So my desk is going up and down without me asking it to, so I apologise for that. We are seeking your feedback on outcomes of this desktop analysis and the initial categorisation of qualifications. They're not locked in, as Simon said. This is the opportunity for you to tell us if you have a different view, and we'd really appreciate that. So as I go through the categorisations, please put your any comments or questions into the Q&A, and we'll come back to them at the end of this session. And we'll also be sending out a survey after the session. That's another opportunity for you to provide us with your feedback. So if we can go to the next slide. So Purpose 1 qualifications, as Simon indicated, lead to a specific occupation, such as a trade or licensed occupation, and they're built around specific tasks with a high level of prescription. So this slide shows that we've identified 26 qualifications across the 2 training packages as a Purpose 1 based on the data analysis. And you can see the first 3 columns in the table link to questions around the definition for Purpose 1. So is it a licence? Is it a traineeship or apprenticeship? And has it got a strong occupational link? The strong occupational link is based on data we received from DEWA that provided information about the graduates in the 2017-18 financial year from the qualifications and the occupation they reported that they were working in the 2018-19 financial year. That data was where that indicated that the graduate was working in the intended industry aligned to the qualification. We've said that it's got a strong occupational link. However, we didn't have access to that data for every qualification, And so the ones that have got NA in that column doesn't mean not applicable, it means not available. So just to clarify that point for you. So you can see most of the qualifications here have got licensing and or apprenticeship, traineeship links. So like Certificate 2 is highlighted in grey because, as Simon said, they weren't in the original data set that we had in scope. They've come across from the demonstration project. Most of the qualifications have got high usage. You can see that in the very right-hand column. That's data from NCVER, Volkstats, and Certificate 3 in automotive sales has strong links in Queensland because the units contained in that qualification link to a motor dealer licence. Certificate 3 in automotive electric vehicle technology was only released in 2021. So we don't have data for that. However, it has been picked up as an apprenticeship in several states and territories. On that basis, we've categorised it as a Purpose 1 qualification. Next slide, Andres. So Purpose 2, prepare learners for multiple related occupation in sectors where the industry context is still very relevant, and the qualifications may be built around a common core set of knowledge for the industry. We've got 12 qualifications that we've categorised as Purpose 2, which you can see on your screen there. Several Certificate 4 and diploma level qualifications in the AUR training package have entry requirements to hold an automotive qualification at a lower AQF level. An example of that is the vehicle loss assessing, which has got a requirement to hold one of, I think it's 5 Certificate 3 qualifications. That indicates that there is a strong automotive industry focus for the qualifications. Certificate 1 in automotive vocational preparation, it's been categorised as Purpose 2 because, again, the units in the qualification are very automotive specific. Next slide, thanks. So Purpose 3, they're qualifications that are cross-sectorial or foundational skills and knowledge and may be applied across a range of industries or lead to a tertiary education qualification. So we've identified 3 qualifications in Purpose 3. They include cross-sector skills in areas of manufacturing, administration and management. However, they are also strongly contextualised to the automotive industry. And you can see by the responses to the questions that we posed that there's green ticks in both Category 2 or Purpose 2 and Purpose 3 in that they have got a strong automotive industry, common skills across automotive industry, but they also contain skills that apply across industry sectors. So we're particularly looking at feedback around those. Certificate 3 in automotive administration is an apprenticeship in South Australia, which was something that we identified after we did the initial categorisation. It's also a traineeship in 3 other states and territories. And so now we're sort of questioning, should that be a Purpose 3? And feedback would obviously be appreciated. And that's that slide. We're ready for our first Q&A, Simon.
Thanks, Leanne, for that summary. Any questions in our Q&A there, Donna?
Currently, no questions are sitting there.
No worries. Well, if anyone does have a question, please, we ask again, please feel free to put them in there, and there'll be an opportunity a little bit later on as well. And to the question about the hard copy, yes, certainly we did mention it before, but you will receive a copy at the end of this, because we appreciate that we're sort of looking at tables full of information a little bit quickly. It's a bit hard to absorb that, and we want to have some meaningful feedback later on.
I do have a question that's just popped up for you. The question comes from Sharon. Was some preliminary unpacking of the units packaged into Purpose 2 and 3 qualifications undertaken that determined the categorisation?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go for it, Annie.
Yes. As Simon mentioned at the beginning, we had pretty tight timeframes to do the initial analysis and submit a preliminary report in June. So we didn't have the opportunity to do much of an in-depth analysis. That's something that we're going to do next. But we did certainly look at the units within qualifications where we were kind of on the fence about them, to try and, determine whether or not they are automotive industry, or especially around those diplomas and certificate 4s, and we'll go into more depth in that in the next stage.
Another question is, why does the data not include 2023?
Sure, I
You
can
want to take that one, Leanne?
take that one. Yep, so the data is available 12 months after it's submitted. So RTOs submit their data, and then it is analysed by the NCVR. It takes 12 months for all of the data to come through and be reconciled in the system and released. The 2023 data is due to be released in around August, September. So we're always lagged 12 months behind in the data that's available to us from the system.
And a question as to whether or not we're thinking about a white card for the automotive sector.
Yeah, interesting question. Certainly, it's not part of the scope of this particular project, but given that we do have coverage of the automotive industry, that'd be something that we'd be perhaps interested in having a conversation about outside of this particular meeting. But love to hear your thoughts on that, Joe. All right.
That brings us to the end of the questions at the moment.
Thank you, Donna. All right, we'll move now into the low and no enrolment analysis. So just a couple of things to be aware of here. You'll note we have got the period there from 2018 to 2022 for the reasons that Leanne mentioned, that there is no more recent enrolment data than that currently available. We'll also just point out that the skills ministers have asked all jobs and skills councils, just as part of their standard remit, to look at qualifications that have low and or particularly low and no enrolments over the last 3 years, and consider whether they need to remain in the system or do they need some other sorts of support. So when we've done our analysis here, we've looked at it over a 5-year period, just to allow for some of the anomalies that may have crept in due to the various restrictions and things through the COVID period in different states and territories. But also we had a project approved and commenced prior to the Quals Reform Design Group projects coming to us. So you'll notice on our website we do have a low and no enrolment qualification project that's running currently. We have sort of absorb that work into this project for the time being, but we will pick that up again fairly shortly. So just rest assured that anything that comes to us as part of this particular project of categorisation is just information. It won't lead to any direct action at this point, but we will take the information across into the low and no enrolment project, and for that particular project there'll be the usual full and open consultation process, and we'd certainly love to have your detailed responses and thoughts once we launch that. And we encourage you to subscribe to the project. You can do that directly on our website, just so we can keep you in the loop about when those consultation opportunities open up. So just in terms of how we've defined things, I think that the no enrolment is pretty simple and clear. If there's 0 enrolments in a year, then there's no enrolments. For the low enrolment, we've determined that just as 50 enrolments or fewer in any one of the 5 years. That's a little bit of an arbitrary number, but it just meant that we don't need to spend time looking at qualifications that have really significant enrolments nationally, but we can just focus on those ones that have really quite low enrolment. As part of the scope of this work. We will have a look at the next slide, please, Andreas, and we'll sort of explain some things as we go. So here you can see the AUM training package. Now, you might be aware that there's 6 qualifications in the AUM package. It's quite a small one. There's 5 listed on here as having low or no enrolment because the 6th one exceeds the definition of low enrolment. So of the 5 on the screen there, you can see 4 have 0 enrolments for the period 2018 to 2022. And what we'd be really interested in for those qualifications is please tell us if you think that there is a need that's perhaps coming up that justifies keeping them in the system. Maybe you've been approached by an industry person that really sees an opportunity here, or maybe there's some other drivers as to why those qualifications haven't been picked up and used. Now, given that it is manufacturing, an obvious one might be that a lot of automotive manufacturing has moved offshore over the last number of years, and that's a very relevant factor. But there may be other things there that we're just not aware of, and we'd love to hear from you about why they might still have a purpose, or perhaps some other supports that we could advocate for to make them useful in the marketplace, even if it means modernising them in some way. And for the Certificate 2 in Automotive Manufacturing Production, Bus, Truck and Trailer, that's got a close link to the other qualification. It's not listed here that has strong enrolments, which is the Certificate 3 level qual. So, one of the, I guess, points of interest there is a couple of things. One is that you can see the enrolments have declined across the period from 2018 to 2022. Be interested in any reasons for that. But also there's not necessarily a really strong link between this qualification and the Cert 3 in terms of the enrolment flow. The amount of people doing the Cert 3, not a great deal of them have done the Cert 2, as is evidenced by the enrolment numbers. So we'd be curious to know if there's some way that we could make that qualification more valuable in the marketplace as well. Thank you, Andreas. We'll have a look at our next slide. Now to AUR, low and no enrolments. You can see, again, a bit of a spread there. There's some with 0 enrolment, such as Cert 2 Automotive Administration across the 5-year period. Some others are somewhat steady, but low in numbers, and some have got a marked decline. For example, the motorsports technology one there, also the vehicle loss assessing, which was mentioned earlier. And for something like the vehicle loss assessing and perhaps the motorsport technology as well, we're well aware that there's a very limited number of RTOs have them on scope. With the vehicle loss assessing, it's only one RTO in the country that's got that on scope. So we'd love to know perhaps what's changed in the market there. Is there still a real need for that? Is the industry using some other qualification in the system to support their needs? That would be interesting information to have as well. And again, just bear in mind that just because something's got low enrolment doesn't necessarily mean that anyone's advocating to have it removed from the system, because we do understand that certain skill sets and qualifications serve a particular niche need that it is critical to an industry. And while the numbers are low, that doesn't necessarily indicate the value that it offers to the industry. Anything you want to add there, Leanne, on that slide?
No, I think you've covered it all, Simon.
Thank you.
Just to say, sorry, the Certificate 4 in Automotive Body Repair Technology, that is aimed at a team leader, manager level role. So it would be interesting again to find out how those roles are being filled if this qualification's not being used.
Yeah, good pick up. Thank you. All right. Our final slide for this section. These ones here actually fall just outside our definition of low enrolments. As you can see, some have spot on 50 for certain years, and other years they're a bit over. But they're qualification, I guess, of interest. Again, for the purpose of, we'd like to understand what's driving either an increase, as you can see with the Cert 2 in bicycle mechanical technology. It's gone from 0 enrolment for the 3-year period there from 2018 to 2020, and then starting to pick up. And we'll be curious to see, I guess, what the 2023 data says when we do get access to that. It may have continued on that trend and getting quite strong. And for some of the others, we can see a marked decline. The bottom one there, the cylinder head reconditioning, 255 in 2018 down to 45 in 2022. We'd love to, again, understand what the drivers are for that. Is that work being picked up elsewhere? Is it kind of a trade that's in, or an aspect of work that's in decline and not really being done much anymore? Whatever it might be, they're the sorts of bits of information that we'd love to hear from you as an RTO and what you hear through your industry partners as well, to inform, again, how we might support, better support some of these products, how we might modernise them, or if in fact there was an opportunity to remove them from the system. I think that's basically it for there. So any questions about the low and no enrolments, or perhaps any of the other topics?
Just circling back to some questions from the categorisation, we had some additional questions. Why is the AUR 30116 listed in Purpose 3, given this may not be appropriate for tertiary pathways?
Well, I'm going to need to check what 3116 is. 1 second.
30116.
That's the Cert 3 in Automotive Administration. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to just need that question again. I'll just find it.
So it's Purpose 3.
Yep.
And the question is why? Why is it Purpose 3, given it may not be appropriate for tertiary pathways? Maybe it's a clarification on what Purpose 3 relates to.
I can answer that, and happy to get feedback, and it may be moved into Purpose 2. It was really because of the administration skills potentially being cross-industry, and so that was really the reason for that, and it is the initial categorisation. We're happy to hear different views and feedback around that.
Yeah, I think Leanne mentioned as we went through that's probably if there's a table here that we're least confident in, or most seeking feedback on, it's probably that Purpose 3, because there's a range of different ways to look at qualifications. What do you give the most weight to? Is it the fact that it is an apprenticeship in the case of a particular qualification, apprenticeship and traineeship in some jurisdictions? Is that the most important thing for categorisation, or do we look more at the fact that administration is a broad skill that can be applied in many areas, albeit tailored a little bit here in the automotive one? So again, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that in your feedback.
Yes, and Francis, who posed that question, also notes that qualification shows low enrolments.
Yes.
So another question is, it's an earlier question. Did you see any patterns in Purpose 2 and 3 categorisations in terms of the AQF levels?
2 and 3. I'll give a preliminary comment on that, and you can add to it, Leanne. Look, probably in the sense that oftentimes the Cert 3s don't appear in there because there's a strong link between them typically, in our particular 2 training packages anyway, to trades and very specific occupations and sometimes licensing. So that's probably one observation. But then you do also get, as you can see on the Purpose 2 slide, which I know you don't have in front of you, but I'm looking at, is a lot of them are Certificate 4s in that area. So it's that sort of next step up, often beyond a trade qualification, perhaps into a management or leadership role within that particular industry. I think Leanne commented on that a little bit earlier as well. So that's common in the Purpose 2 qualifications, and the Purpose 3, probably not so much about the level, although the diplomas tend to feature in there because they do tend to have those sort of perhaps higher order general skills such as management, leadership, those sorts of things.
Yes, and like Certificate 1 in Automotive Vocational Preparation could be a Purpose 3 because it is a pathway for those sort of foundational skills, people coming into the workforce, but it does have a very automotive focus. Equally, there's the Certificate 4 in Automotive Management that we've put in Category 2, and that's more because looking at their units, it's got very a sort of can be a manager across multiple areas of automotive. So that sort of tipped. It's a bit of a tipping point into two, but these can all be argued either way, and that's why we're really keen for you to put forward any rationale or reasons that you would see them being in a different purpose than we've initially categorised them in.
Another question is, does the data consider international students or CRICOS course enrolments?
Leave that one for you, Leanne, initially.
Okay. Yeah, certainly the enrolment numbers does. So it's based on total vet activity data from the NCV VoxStats, and that includes international student data. The data that we have sitting behind this, we have separated out the enrolments for international student enrolments, so we can sort of see what percentage of the qualification is being delivered to international students.
Perhaps that's something, that we'd appreciate maybe some feedback on too. Does a qualification need to stay in the system? And I don't have a view on this, but we'd be interested in your views, like a qualification that serves, say, 95% international students and very small domestic numbers. Is that the intent of the system, or is it just being used for perhaps other migration reasons rather than meeting a skills need in Australia? So there's some of the other things that start to creep in with those sorts of questions as well.
A comment here that the licensing requirements for vehicle body maker in New South Wales changed recently and now allow a Certificate 3 engineering fabrication trade as a licensing pathway. So the suggestion is that that may impact future demand for AUM 30218.
Yeah, good observation. And we're sort of aware there's a lot of work happening in the licensing space in New South Wales at the moment, and we expect more probably changes and additions and subtractions there along the way. And that's one of the questions we've, I guess, to a degree, grappled with a little bit, because licensing, if it's going to be the driver for something being nominated as a Purpose 1, as an example, licensing is going to change over time, and it varies wildly across the country. Some things are licensed only in one state or territory, which means that 7 other states or territories don't consider it to be something that requires a license for their own reasons. So, does one jurisdiction's license make something a Purpose 1 qual, or does that need to still be looked at differently? And I guess that's part of the opportunity for the feedback, that things are going to change over time, and that may mean that qualifications move in and out of purposes over time as well. I just want to emphasise too that the fact that while we would like to get the classifications right, so that we can have some meaningful feedback for QRDG, there's sort of no particular implications for a qualification being nominated as a Purpose 1 or Purpose 2 or a Purpose 3. At this point, it's really just looking at the existing stock in the system and saying, well, do the purposes address all the particular reasons that we might have a qual in the system? It's probably going to have more impact when it comes to the design of a new qualification. It's a lens through which to look at it and make sure it actually serves the purpose for which it's intended. Any other questions, Donna?
No questions sitting there at the moment, Simon.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, feel free to
could I just reiterate that your feedback, and that in the email that was sent out to everybody, we've put in the webinar information has got the list of the qualifications and the initial categorisation, as does the slide pack that will come out. And we really encourage you to test that internally with people within your organisation, and provide feedback via the survey. Sorry if I've stolen your thunder there, Simon.
No, that's all right. It's all good. Happy to talk less. So yeah, thanks. As Leanne mentioned there, the survey will come out shortly, and we encourage you to share that within your organisation as well. So the pressure's not on you just personally to respond to all of that. We'd like to get as wide a range of views as we can, and we'll provide the additional information, and you can hopefully provide some context to those in your organisation as well, having attended. So we will be picking up the feedback that we some of the types of questions that have come through today and in our session on Tuesday. That'll help inform our final report. So we do very much value it. As far as the low and no enrolment activity, just keep in mind that we do need to provide a response for the purpose of this project, which is really just advice on that topic at the moment. But the actual project for low and no enrolments, that we expect to go out for consultation, public consultation, around September, October, hopefully sooner rather than later. And that'll be a really key opportunity for you to provide feedback and information that's going to have a direct impact on the system. So we encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. It's attached to the survey as well. You can just indicate it on there, and we can do things in the background to make sure you're kept up to date and in the loop. We do encourage you to jump on the website and subscribe to that project, to this project, the categorisation project as well. And we do have just a monthly newsletter. We're not trying to sell you anything, but it just keeps you up to date with any of the other projects that might come along the way as well. And make sure that you've got the full opportunity to have a share and provide the sorts of expertise that we know you have out there in the industry. You can see that another
There's one more that's just popped up. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there future purpose to consolidating the qualifications across the training packages, reflecting the previous comment on the Certificate 3 in engineering going forward?
Great question. I suppose what I'll say at the moment is that one of the obligations and remits for Jobs and Skills Councils is to work collaboratively and to try and reduce duplication in the system. In terms of the specifics of whether we can achieve the sorts of things you've asked there, we, I guess, are very aware that there's often, IR implications and other things that come into play as well that we, to a degree, would like to stay agnostic to, but we have to acknowledge that those things exist, and so I wouldn't make any commitments on that front at this point.
And Simon, what's the likely impact of Purpose 1, 2 or 3 categorisation?
That's actually a really good question. So as I think I mentioned, but just a few moments ago, at this point in time, it's really this activity is being used to test whether the purposes are well defined enough to cover all the things the types of things that our system needs to service. And I think we'll probably see more value in it when we get to the point of if they go ahead with this purpose-driven model, because that's not even a given at this point. But if it was to proceed, when we come to designing a qualification, I think at that point that's where we might see some value here. So things like Donna, tell me if I'm overstepping here, but in Donna's work that she's doing as part of the demonstration project, just as an example, currently in the AUR package, there's 15 Cert 2s. Many of them align directly. There's a Cert 2 in automotive what am I trying to say here? Automotive electrician? No, that's not it.
It's electrical technology.
That's the one. Sorry, Adrian, you should be jumping in and correcting me here. I can see you on screen. So it's a one-for-one proposition essentially at the moment. You do a particular Cert 2 that's specialised, and that generally leads to obviously a specialised Cert 3 trade certificate. The questions, I guess, that come up is that the best model for a learner who's perhaps a secondary school student or someone who's just all they know really is they're interested in working in the automotive industry. They probably don't know the full range of qualifications and different nuances to the industry. So is a Certificate 2 pathway qualification better designed as something that is a broad introduction to the automotive industry? And then they specialise at the point once they've got a bit of information, they've got some fundamental learning, and they specialise at the apprenticeship level, if you like, the Cert 3 level. It's those sorts of questions that the purposes can help us to ask and focus on at the design and review phase. I hope that sort of answers your question, but it is a good question that the QRDG is grappling with a bit as well.
Another question is, I realise it's early days, but will the design models for Purpose 1 and Purpose 2 qualifications involve repackaging units and changes to unit design?
Can I ask what we mean by repackaging units to whoever? Sharon, sorry, you asked that question. Are we able to
Sharon,
unmute Sharon?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Sharon.
Yes. So when you're looking at the actual packaging of the qualification, where you've got core units and elective units, I'm wondering if that's going to have an impact on the design. But I'm also curious to know, and I realize we're just starting this whole process, but I'm really excited about it. So I was just wondering whether there would be any fundamental changes to the way the unit is structured. From what I gather, the unit's still going to be the building block. But would you be looking at reconceptualizing how that unit might look and the assessment requirements?
Yeah, great question. So on the first part about the packaging rules for qualifications, there's no proposition at the moment to go into the existing qualifications, across the board and start repackaging them. So one of the things I think that everybody involved in this reform work understands is that creates a lot of churn for industry, for RTOs, for everybody, if you just go in and arbitrarily make changes. So in terms of that sort of wholesale change right off the bat, just to calm everybody down, don't need to worry too much about that at this point. Will it have an impact when you're designing a new qualification or a qualification goes up for review? Yeah, it probably could. The sorts of conversations that might come up, and don't take this as being the outcome, but if industry has said I'll use the certificate 2 and purpose 2 kind of alignment as an example. If industry says that a person who's just entering the automotive industry should have these fundamental skills and exposure to the automotive industry, should a certificate 2 purpose 2 qual be largely core units and less option for electives? That's one view that might exist. Those sorts of questions will get asked as the designs and propositions come up. If we look at many of the qualifications at all different levels, some of them have 50, 60, 70, 80 elective units sitting in the pool, the vast majority of which never get used. So, would we look at, as we go through low and no enrolments and look at trying to refine and streamline the system a little bit, would we look at reducing those elective pools a bit? Yeah, it's possible that could happen as well. But again, no decisions have been made. Around the unit design, I guess the two things have been said. One is that the system will retain units of competency as a core building block for qualifications. It's also been, I guess, suggested that we might need to look at the templates for them and consider, do they fit the purpose? Are they suitable for all the various types of qualifications that we have? And do we need to consider something that's not just a one size fits all? So they're open to that, but they're certainly not looking to scrap units of competency across the board at all. Has that answered your question, Sharon? I'm not sure if you can even speak at the minute. But
Yes, very much so. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor?
Nothing. Here we are. Don't speak too soon. Would you look at one national qualification with specialisations within the qualification as qualifications such as ICT?
Okay, so if I'm interpreting that question right, and maybe if we can give Lisa the chance to speak in terms of the muting, if possible, are we looking at having, in a sense, less qualifications, but the option for specialisations within those qualifications? That's how I'm sort of taking that question, and correct me if I'm misreading it, Lisa. I think that's certainly not being excluded as a model, but I think what has been said is that it sort of doesn't solve the problem if all we do is take, again, I'll use the Cert 2s as an AUR. If we take 15 qualifications and make them one, but we have 15 specialisations still within that qualification, we haven't really changed anything. It just looks a little bit different, but functionally, it's still the same thing. You've still got a whole lot of units and specialisations that an RTO has to maintain and doesn't really change much for the learner or for industry. So it's specialisations have a place, but I don't think there's no push to go in that direction of just consolidating quals but having more specialisations. Does that answer your question, Lisa?
Yes, thanks.
Give you another 30 seconds because we're mindful of time. You've been very quiet, Adrian. I'm going to pick on you just because I know your face. All right. Well, I guess it looks like we've answered those questions, but certainly if there is any more questions, you've got opportunity in the survey. I think there is some free text fields there as well. I can see something's popped up.
Yeah, Francis asks, will you be working with the Centres for Excellence in Canberra?
We certainly are working with the Centres of Excellence in Canberra, but also the other ones that are around nationally as well. We're actually going to visit the one in Perth shortly. And as others appear, absolutely. Some of the different aspects of work have actually been called out as being led by some of the Centres of Excellence as well. But until all of that takes shape, we don't know exactly how it looks, but they are very much at the table in these conversations as well. Thanks for that question. So yeah, again, we encourage you to use the survey form, give us your feedback through there. Any questions you want to ask through there, please feel free. If you have just questions generally, we do have a general inquiries line on our website, and the people that you can see on the screen are the ones that pick it up at the other end. And so you're likely to hear from us if you've got any questions or queries or ideas that you want to run by us. We'd be happy to hear it. So please take every opportunity to do that. So if that's all, we just want to say thanks again for your time and for having a share, and we'll call it a day there. Thank you all. Thanks very much.
Thank you.